Coaching allows you to get from point A to point B faster and quicker than you would do on yourself. It isn't the end all be all because coaching is very specific to what you need at this point. And it isn't therapy. Ideally, coaching talks about where you are and where you want to go and the things you need to change to get there. Whereas therapy and so forth talks about the past.
So, Chris, I think to start off, like you were part of a life coaching business. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. My wife at the time we started a life coaching company back in 2010. And back when life coaching wasn't even a thing. And this all came about because we had kids early 2000. I started a pool company after leaving Hewlett Packard. So being in corporate for 18 years, thinking that was my end all be all job. And that obviously changed. And didn't know how to run a business. So started a pool company in Sacramento where honestly, you drive down the street, people wave you down to work on their pool because two things were happening. People were moving there and there were two kinds of people in that neighborhood, landscape trucks or pool trucks, because people were just coming up and building like crazy. So there's lots of opportunity, but I had no idea how to run a business. I always worked for a company. And this way I was everything, owner, operator, the whole 9 yards. Great experience. Did that for 5 years, ended up scaling it 3x and sold it to two different people, which was a great experience. My wife at the time went to a weekend coaching retreat with Oprah's coach back in the day. Learned how to be a life coach, came home and said, want to write a book. And I'm like, sweet, let's go do that. So she writes a book. And then we get hired to help her scale her coaching practice. Not knowing much about that, but we just figured it out along the way, worked for them for 2 years, scaled that business. And then she decided she wanted to do her own coaching thing. We teamed up and started doing that, built it up to about 2 million in revenue and realized we hit the ceiling at about that. We only do so much as two people could do, basically ran out of time. So moved to Texas to scale the business and basically hire people. Realized when we're hiring people, we had no system or foundation or structure in place on how to manage them, measure them, or anything. We could figure it out, but we realized these employees were doing what they were told. So found the book traction and used EOS to scale the business and double it every year without doubling all the people. So by the time I sold back to her in 2019, 27 million, a little over 27 million in revenue, really lean team and really leveraging online classes and training as well as in person. So I needed something to do and I couldn't play golf all the time. So decided to found EOS that they had a training program. I'm like, I love that because it really was a pivotal point. My buddy, between selling and starting EOS, he said, whatever you do with your business, I hope, please come to my business and do the same thing. And I thought I could do my own thing and figure it out along the way or just do EOS. That makes total sense. And started my journey in 2020 and then has been working and trying to find clients ever since.
That's incredible. I want to go back to the pool story real quick because that sounds really interesting. I think a lot of our conversation today is going to be about life coaching because I think a lot more people could use it and kind of this understanding of what it is will be great. When you started the pool company, did you go out and did you buy a company that was already in existence, or did you just say, I got this van, just put a new logo on the side of it, and here we are?
So I knew nothing about pools. Didn't really have any growing up, right? I went to the community pool back in the day. And so my wife at the time found an ad in the paper. This guy was selling a pool route and he would train you. And I'm like, that sounds good. And he was in locally. So talked to him, met up with him, and basically bought a book of business from him. And we spent 2 weeks together. He taught me the business. And then I had a truck. We went down to the distributor. He set me up on the equipment and he said, you're ready to go. And so 2 weeks in, I figured it out, right? And it's like a paper route, but everything's fine until you walk in the backyard. and it could be 5 minutes or an hour. And your job is really to make the pool route as optimized and as close together as possible and charge accordingly. But for me, it was personal because these are my customers. That's my pool. I want to make sure, it looked good. They could use it when they wanted to, and then get home and figure out how to run a business. How do you invoice? How do I manage what I'm spending on equipment? Am I charging the right amount? All those fun things, and learning along the way. Oh, by the way, I'm also trying to get my contractor's license because in California, in order to work on certain pools, you need to have a general contractor's license. So there's a lot of people with a truck that do pools that don't have a license. It's not that regulated. But for me, I wanted to do higher end things. Pivotal point was becoming a general contractor. And then the other part was partnering with a pool builder that were making so many pools per day that they didn't have enough. They had a gap between finishing the pool and, leaving the property. And then the client would call them 2 weeks later. And I'm like, how do I take care of a pool? So I partnered with them. And honestly, I was getting 2-3 calls a week on new pools. I'd just show up and I'd get a customer right off the bat. And that's how I built the business, as well as in California at the time, they're moving into higher technology pumps that were saving energy, as well as solar. So I got into doing those things. So it wasn't just raking leaves out of the pool. It was optimizing their system, saving them money, moving into electronic remote control kind of systems, which I had a niche for from working at HP. And it was great because I can go in and take them from the old mechanical clocks and the old way of doing which they hated to do. They didn't like managing their pool, to something they would take 5 minutes a week to do because it managed itself. And that was the fun part of, you see that old broken down pool equipment that they would just complain about. And I'm like, tell you what, I can cut your electricity bill by 2/3 and you wouldn't have to do anything. I would be here for 10 minutes a week and you could use the pool all week long and not worry about anything. And that's the kind of stuff that was fun, of just up leveling everybody's pool. And then it got to the point that I was going to start a pool building business from there. And then 2007 and 2008 were happening. I'm like, probably not a good time. But the fun part when that happened, when I sold my business, the guys that bought it, the non-licensed people would just go away, and they ended up doubling their business during that time, because the people that weren't in it for the long term just faded away. And then there was a huge need for, professional pool service companies, things like that to come in. So my buddy, actually, his business got too big because he was going to do it as a retirement business. And he got to the point it was too big for him because there was just so much need out there. And it's a great way to learn how to run a business.
I bet. And were you hiring employees at this point, or were you doing all of these visits yourself?
I was doing everything myself. Again, not learning from the best sources of how to manage people. I got to the point where I had no time. I had 2 young kids too at the time. So I needed to be home by 5. And my personality does not like leaving things undone. So it's really hard to be in the middle of fixing a pump or replumbing a system. It's like 4:45, I got to go. And so I had to manage that. And that's when you bring somebody on. And then you get home and take care of the kids and so forth. And then you have to go do invoicing and all this other fun business stuff at the back end, advertising, that kind of stuff. But learning through that, the hard stuff. But one big thing for me, which saved tons of time, was going from monthly billing to quarterly billing and telling my clients, hey, I'm going to bill up front. You've seen me every single week for the last 2 years and nobody skipped a beat. It was great. And it saved me a ton of time on the back end. But those kind of learnings along the way made it a lot easier to run the company. I never thought about hiring people. There was a guy that I knew that his business was cultivating new pool people. So he had a book of business, 140, 160 pools that he couldn't do alone. So he'd hire people, train them up, and then sell them part of the business or help them go out on their own. And then he just keep doing that over and over again. And that was one of the options as a pool owner to do that.
I mean, it sounds like what you got essentially from this business was an MBA. Like the ins and outs of business and how to operate a business and finances and invoicing, like all of your business learnings came from buying this route and figuring it out.
Yes, for sure. Because you realize you can only have so much time in a day and only so much capacity of yourself and so forth. Even though it's fun and exciting and all those great things, I had a problem if somebody walk up, it's like, hey, I need some help. I'm like, sure, I'll help you. And, take away from my schedule, which, you always think you have plenty of time and you actually don't. So that was great learning and try to keep my family time sacred and my business, that a priority. But when things got to the point of working Saturdays and maybe Sundays to finish the work and things like that, and chasing the money, that's when you're like, I need either help or start selling off the business. And honestly, it gets to the point of keeping the business so consolidated that you're not driving a half an hour per client. You're driving 5 minutes to the next client over and over and over again. That's where you want to get to. And I think a lot of pool people at that point anyways, there's so much opportunity, they forget that. And it's just easy to work 12, 15 hours a day.
It's just take business from anywhere, and like now you got to book a business that's all spread throughout different area codes or zip codes.
Yes, and that bodes. And I tell all my clients this too. You need to find a niche and stay in that niche. It'll save money and energy on your marketing, on who you serve, and really get to your ideal client. Is it based on location or whatever it is? And a lot of my clients in EOS, by the second year, they're figuring that out and realizing, wow, my ideal client is not who I served 5 years ago. And we have been stuck in that client mode. We need to elevate to start serving the right client we should be serving moving forward.
When we were running Hunt to Killer, one of the things that we would make changes sometimes to the experiences, to the product, and our kind of initial early adopter customer or customers would get very upset with some of these things that we were changing. And he had this really interesting saying of like, you're not a real company until you fire your first customer. And because sometimes when you're trying to find that focus, like you're going to make some people mad, but if you understand who your customer are, like you are serving just them, and anybody else that kind of falls off at that point, or if your marketing resources aren't going, they would have been inefficient or wouldn't have kind of been in your bullseye anyhow. So yeah, I love that.
And here's the reality, and we talk about this all the time. The clients that you used to serve that you are still serving, they're not your ideal client anymore. They take up 80% of your time and give you 20% of the revenue. And it's not bad news. That's good news. That means you're elevating your business. You're working with a higher end client. Either give them somebody else that can serve them or some kind of way that they need to be served elsewhere, because those are the things that are holding you back from actually serving and spending less time and making more money with the right kind of client. Because that's that kind of eluding, place where you get the right kind of client. It's not like working, because you're enjoying their time. They're appreciative. You both worked well together. They share the core values, things like that. And the ones that keep calling you for the simple things that they just haven't fixed themselves, those are the ones that those routinely come up on the issues list. And my question is, when are you going to either give them to somebody else or, find a way to have somebody else serve them, because you can't do that anymore. That's just not where you should be in your business.
After that, you got into coaching. It sounds like with your wife. Like what is life coaching? Because when you got started in this, it wasn't necessarily a big thing, and now I hear these terms a lot about accountability coaches and things like that. Like when you guys first started this, like what was life coaching, and how did that evolve? So
life coaching evolved from the standpoint of helping people understand when they're stuck, when they just need a little push to get out of where they are. That's where a coach comes in. Just like in a fitness routine or anything. Any kind of athlete has at least one coach, and helping them along in their process. You see this in golf all the time, where Tiger Woods, he's had multiple coaches in his career, because coaching allows you to get from point A to point B faster and quicker than you would do on yourself. It isn't the end all be all, because coaching is very specific to what you need at this point. And it isn't therapy. Ideally, coaching talks about where you are and where you want to go and the things you need to change to get there. Whereas therapy and so forth talks about the past. We were big on talking about how you got to that point, but not focusing on your past. You can't change your past, right? But changing the way you think about where you are and where you want to get to. That kind of mindset coaching really comes down to of, if you want to be here, what does it take to think differently to get there? Is it getting up at 5 a.m. and going to the gym and doing this routine and eventually getting there? Whatever it is to get you out of your own way a lot of times, and thinking differently, because there's a lot of people that think about the past. Their past led them here, and that's why they're stuck. A lot of times they just need the encouragement and the right kind of questions to help them think differently of, what do you want and what do you need to stop doing so that you can actually get where you want to go? And once you get there, really being self-sufficient. In my business now, we do a lot of the same thing. Our job is to work ourselves out of a job. We are trying to make you and your team independent, self-managed, so you can run your own business, so we get out of your way. We are not there for the long term. And so it goes along the same lines as, I don't necessarily want to be there full time. I can be there if you need somebody objective, but we just need you to get to the point you want help, talk about how you got here, what needs to change so you can get to the next level or the next step, whatever it is you want to get to. And once you get there and feel like you can handle it yourself, we want you to graduate, hop out of the nest, fly on your own, all those kind of things. And the reality is, in life, you're going to hit another obstacle, hit another ceiling, and you'll need a different coach at that point, or somebody to come in and just help you rethink, again, what do you need to change to get to where you want to go? A lot of times, especially humans or business owners in general, they can't wait to get to the certainty. They want to get to the point where, like, I've made it, I'm good. The problem is everything changes around them, and there's the bar keeps getting raised, whether you like it or not. And we talk about the saying, you're either growing or you're dying, especially in business. If you're not growing, your competitors are. And if you're not growing, you're behind. So that's why not everybody can run a business. It is a constant evolution. And yeah, there's time to rest along the way, but you are constantly looking at evolving and getting better and more efficient, faster, all those things. And same with coaching. People were coming to us because they were stuck in the past, or stuck in their marriage, or couldn't stop drinking or smoking, or whatever it is that was holding them back. And a lot of times it's emotional baggage from their past, right? And what they think, and going through my own journey, especially from the male side, somebody told me this was very impactful, that men created a playbook like when they were 8 or 9 years old. And this is the playbook they go to every single time. You know, if they were, however they were raised or however they were, those time frames, those things were embedded in their playbook, and that's what they have a go-to until they actually realize, that no longer works for me or serves me. I need to think differently about my relationship, about my well-being, my health, all those things. And a lot of men that haven't done the work are stuck in that playbook. And that's why they keep repeating the same things over and over again.
Is there a way that someone can recognize, like, are there different things that you can look for internally inside of your mind? Maybe you're reflecting on actions to where you can identify that you are kind of stuck in that 7-8-year-old. And I've heard this many times. Like I forget what book I was reading, but it was all about, like, we build these shells. We're so curious and we want to understand things when we're younger. And then, like, 7, 8, or 9, like, we harden and we put this shell around ourselves. Are there things that like either you as a coach have helped people identify, or traits where it's like, hey, things do need to change at this point, and this is kind of the framework that you're currently using that's dated?
And yeah, it's really easy, especially with my clients. One of the first questions I ask is, how's your business going and what do you want from your business? Inevitably, they always want more than where they are right now. And then we ask, okay, how did you get here and why are you still here? And a lot of times they will tell me why they're stuck. They either they made enough money and thought that was it, and they ran out of time. They're constantly fighting fires in their business, or they're constantly in the urgent. Everything's so crazily urgent that they can never come up for air. And that's why they're repeating their process, because they're barely hanging on. They're barely keeping above water. And if we can get them to take a moment to step out of that and look around and start seeing what has to change in order for them to, say, sell the business in 5 years or leave it for their kids, understanding, and from the perspective of coming in and saying, if we can establish the gap of where you are and where you want to go, then we can sort of figure out how we can start chipping away at getting there. But a lot of times people, business owners and people in general, are so caught up in the day-to-day that they never can elevate and start seeing, wow, I've been stuck there for a while. I've never got past that point. And honestly, if an owner says, hey, we're doing well, we're right where we want to be, and we're at 2 million in revenue and I don't want to grow any bigger, great. That's great for you. But people that want to have more of it, or they think they can do more and that elevate, or their peers are doing better and they just don't know how to get unstuck, that's just really taking a break from the monotonous day-to-day and elevating out and looking at the business as a whole and saying, oh, I thought it'd be here by now. I'm like, okay, so is that where you want to be in 2 years or 5 years? If that's the case, let's look at where you are and where you want to be, and then what needs to change a little at a time, because typically it's a huge gap, at least for them. And we'll just talk about, let's just chip away at the things to start getting you there, and making progress towards that. But a lot of times, again, they don't have time. They are so busy in the urgent that they never see that there's a gap, or they just don't know what it looks like until they can actually slow down, and they know what it is. I just ask them a couple questions and write down what they say, and then they start nodding. It's like, yeah, I realize that. Yeah, I wish we would have changed that. I wish I would have fixed that. Or, yeah, I need to have that conversation. All those things. And the biggest thing is having them slow down, step out of their business so they can actually work on their business and not get stuck in their business all the time.
And when you think about the life coaching, like if Tiger Woods is looking for a coach, he's generally to improve his golf swing, he's going to go find a golf coach, bowling, football, sports and other things. When you're looking for a life coach, people that focus in a specific area like golf, like they are a subject matter expertise in golf and they help you improve your golf swing. How do you get great coaches that haven't necessarily been to where that person is going or been where that person is today or followed kind of that same path, where you can have similarities in kind of the sports world? Like, what goes into a great coach? Is it just the great questions that they ask? Like, what does that look like? From
the standpoint of, at least in our experience in the coaching world, people would come out being certified as a coach and they want to help everyone. And we always told them, you need to find a niche. A lot of times that niche is based on experience. They've went through that process. They've been divorced, so they become a divorce coach. They've been widowed, they become a widow coach, because they have practical hands-on experience and they've walked that journey. They've come out on the other side. And they have a practice that they can help you get there in a certain way. It also is about rapport. You have to meet that coach and say, I think I want to get here. And a good coach is going to ask a lot of questions and listen most of the time and be able to say, you want to be here. That's not really my niche, but I know somebody that I want you to talk to. Even a therapist, same thing. I've heard this before, where you need a therapist, you need someone to talk to in general. The first one you meet isn't necessarily the right one. And then once you get that experience, like, oh, I should ask this question for the next one. And we want that to happen. Once you get in that realm, you'll start asking great questions and align with somebody that you really think will help you. I tell people on the coaching side, and what I do as well, we are here to move you forward, get you unstuck. First, we have to establish where you are. And that's why we ask a lot of questions. And when people say they don't know, they do know. They just don't know how to say it. And that's where the conversation comes in. And if I can get people to open up, and that's where the rapport comes in. There's got to be a level of trust between myself and my clients, or any coach and client, so that client can open up, that client can go there, the client can cry in front of whatever it is, right? To get them to start getting unstuck. I've seen this, I've gone through it as well. We get stuck on our own story and we think that's the reality. And it's not always reality. It's just our story about what we think is going on. Having a coach is a great sounding board, and somebody that can say questions like, is that really true? And just stop talking and let that person marinate in that thought and start asking themselves that question and coming up with their own answers. And a lot of times the reality we've made for ourselves, or what has happened to us, and the story that we made up from that, is not necessarily the truth. And you've heard that before, where people feel, I've been disrespected by so-and-so, and, hold that grudge or whatever it is for years. And that other person has no idea that's going on. Those are the kind of things that I think contribute to us getting stuck, and getting clarity through a therapist or a coach, to help us, I guess, get a sense of reality here and get some clarity of what we're thinking and change the way we are thinking. Because a lot of the stuff we make up is not true, but makes us feel better, or justifies where we are. That's why client-wise or even person-wise, you have to really want to change and go seek out a coach and be willing to put the work in if you want to make changes, because it's work. And as you probably know, once you get a life coach or a coach in general, you will get knowledge that you can't unknow from now on. You will think differently. And sometimes it's not always unicorns and daisies. And you'll see the things that are not very pretty that you need to change about yourself, and so forth.
That was probably one of my biggest lessons from, I had a company at one point called Run for Your Lives, and it was a zombie infested 5K obstacle course race. And we exploded. We went from zero to about 10 million bucks over 3 years. And then we just imploded. So we went from this rocket ship growth to, like, it literally just fell off a cliff. And there's a variety of reasons that happened, but for the most part, like, it was a trend, and that trend had passed, and nobody wants to run from zombies anymore. And it was a catastrophic failure. Everybody lost. I lost, my partner lost, vendors lost. And when I started my next business, I got into Vistage. And what was so powerful about Vistage is not only did you have a network of other kind of peers who are facing similar issues in different industries, but it also comes with a built-in coach who was the chair. And that was just an unlock for me. Like, I had never, up until that point, I knew I needed something, because I was like, I don't want to repeat that experience. And I know there's people that can help me. But you're absolutely right. We're like, once you understand it, once you know it, once you share that experience and have a deeper grasp understanding, like, you just don't unknow it. And you get a built-in coach. And, that was the difference between, $10 million in revenues over 3 years and $206 million in revenue over 7 years with Hunt to Killer. So couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I coach businesses that want to get to $1 million, right? And we as owners and entrepreneurs and humans in general will beat ourselves up for not knowing something. And it's when you're in a peer group, like you mentioned, having somebody else saying it's okay. I went through the same thing. You're like, it's a relief. Like, you're not alone, because entrepreneurs always feel like they're alone. They're moving the rock uphill by themselves, all those things. And the reality is there's a lot of us out there that have gone through those things, and we all lived and see the other side of it. And we've learned and realized we shouldn't do that way. Don't do that again. But it is amazing. Even when business owners, I ask questions like, hey, what are your numbers? And you see that blank look, like they don't either want to know them or they're ashamed of them. And it's like, hey, that's welcome to running a business. That's the part of the deal. And it's okay. Let's work on getting that in order so you can feel good about those and things. All those little things that you can imagine that holding the person back because they feel like they're stuck. Well, they're stuck because they don't know their numbers, or they're not good numbers. And we need to focus attention on that and having that conversation and just saying, it's okay. you can say you feel stupid, but don't, because we've all been there and we've all figured it out. You can too. And like you said, being in the room with people that have been there, done that, and giving you, I think, the freedom to say, okay, I'm just like everybody else and I will learn and move on, allows you to learn and move on. That's the thing. And seeing the relief on their faces when you say, it's okay. You didn't know what you didn't know, but now you know.
Yeah, I had a I have a group of consumer product operators that I had put together. So dating back to 2020, I was meeting a lot of incredible people, but I wanted to get a small handful of them in a private group. And so 8 of us came together. Then the pandemic hit, so we went into bi-weekly calls. And then I deployed, and so a couple people held it together. And over the last year, we've been expanding the group. So we've gone from 8 people. Today, we've got like 25 people. We meet on a bi-weekly basis. We come together, and we start off with what's going great, what's keeping us up at night, and what's our one ask from the group. And the feedback that I get from the value of the group is not about, the Slack channel or it's enjoyable and you can trade information and, we come together on a quarterly basis and go do dinner. But the biggest feedback that I get is like, I don't feel alone in building this business. Like they're having the same problem that I'm having and that makes me feel better. And like, now we can share in this together. It's not about like, wallowing in our sorrows and like the woe me attitude. It's about like, okay, great. Like it's not just me. And now we're going to solve this problem together.
Exactly. And that's the thing in my EO group. It's the same kind of mentality. We want to share our experiences so the other person be like, oh, that's how you figured that out, right? We're not telling them how to solve their own problems. We're getting them to figure out how to solve their own problems. And especially when you're in a peer group, sharing experiences I found is a great way for other people to sit there and you see them nodding and writing stuff down. Like that just made their day. And it would have taken them months or years to figure that out on their own if they ever did. Because again, they're too busy. They don't have time to read a book, or there's so many books out there, there's confusion, those kind of things. I find a number of business owners don't have the time to join a peer group, so they become stagnant. They're just going to work, looking for the dumpster fire, as inevitably they'll be, and then they're just reactive in their business. And they've never carved out time to work on their business and get away and start, getting themselves some information so they can actually become a better leader, that kind of stuff. And that's what we try to do, is try to make that happen. And a coach says the same thing. Not tell them, but help them get insight that like, tell me more about what you're doing and why this is happening. And typically, at least when I went through therapy, hearing yourself say it, and I think that's what the therapist wants. When you start figuring your own stuff out, then they start realizing they're no longer needed because you like, oh, you're getting it. And now you're off and, go be excellent and figure things out. And when you get stuck, there might be, I'll be there or somebody else will be there to help you get unstuck, those kind of things. And I think that's incredible. A great leader will always want to learn and always want to improve.
That's I talk about this a lot, but like the biggest growth hacks for me in all of my businesses, peer group and coaches. Like that's it. Like, you could talk about the strategy and the people and the marketing efforts, but like for me as an individual and for the growth of the business, it's the absorbing that knowledge like a sponge and getting that advisorship and mentorship and those shared experiences. I agree.
Well, we used to say one of the phrases, everyone needs a coach. The greatest athletes have coaches, right? Everyone's had a coach if they want to grow and learn. Some people get point and they feel they're satisfied. That's great. And some people aren't emotionally ready to have a coach yet. And you can't help somebody lose weight unless they want to lose weight. It is what it is, right? So like I said, that whole thing is when there's a need and they want that, like there's resources out there and getting the coach that they need to help them get unstuck.
We've talked a little bit about like coaches from a life coach standpoint. When a business is looking for a certified implementer, professional implementer, expert implementer, some of the things that you talked about earlier of like, do these people gel? Does everybody like see eye to eye? Do you see life the same way? I think that's critically important for the implementer and company relationship as well. Like What are some things that either you see or that you recommend if there is a company out there that's self-implementing and they are either vetting or speaking with a couple implementers, like what questions should they be asking and what should they be thinking to themselves?
So it's a good question because I also coach self-implementers that are going through this journey. Um, Fundamentally, it is a huge challenge for a business for everybody to get in their own seat and just to execute in their business. Um, Bringing in a system like that, some companies do it, or somebody gets hired as the integrator and said, "Here, we're doing this system, figure it out, and teach us along the way." I find that self-implementers have a hard time keeping on track because they don't have the experience of how all the tools work together and they're all interlocking. Um, and some just want a quick fix, that's fine. There's tools for that, but you're probably going to get stuck down the road, which happens. Any business owner is going to get stuck in their journey. It's inevitable. We're just there to help make that being stuck not happen as often or not be as detrimental to the business. Self-inventors that realize they want to bring an outside objective person in, that's what they do. They do EOS. They're an expert at doing that. And we allow you to be an expert in your business. Get in your seat, because most of the times they're in multiple seats. And the reality is they become a roadblock for the team being successful. And if we can get them to really be open and honest and appreciative of that and be willing to change, then they start seeing the success that it was eluding them because they think, I can't afford anybody else. I'm just going to keep doing it this way. What the reality is, they're going to be stuck eventually. We have to have them be open-minded. So they're like, and be willing to change, because what worked before isn't necessarily going to work in the future. And what you're doing now isn't working because you're calling me and having questions. Some people like getting people with their industry experience. The reality is it doesn't matter what you do. The reality is how you manage people and energy in your business. I want you to be amazing in your business. I can help you figure that out from my perspective and then get out of your way. There's a step in we talked about the rapport if you have industry experience. And there's always that mentality is like, well, we bring in a consultant who doesn't know our business. There's no credibility there. Whereas EOS is agnostic. We can work with any company that has people. Again, it's the leadership team that's got to want to do the work, because as we teach the tools and system to them, they'll teach people below them. And that's where the magic happens. And everybody's learning the system, speaking the same language, rowing in the same direction. And if we can get them to do that. Now, I always tell them, if we're not a good fit after our conversation, I know people that I can introduce you to that do what I do. We all do the same thing, but they might be a better fit for you. Maybe they're in your location that I won't travel to, something like that. I do a lot of virtual sessions with virtual teams. There's implementers that don't do virtual. So I always realize we trade back and forth from that perspective. My end all be all at the end of the day, I want to just help the client get solved. If it's me or somebody else, it doesn't matter, as long as they get solved. And if we can help them, I'm gladly to refer that person to the right person and hear 6 months from now how they're killing it. And that's what makes me feel good, because I know I'd rather have them work with the right person than not work with us at all.
When you're getting new clients, or maybe it's even some of the companies that you're working with that are self-implementing, like what are like the biggest challenges, we'll say, as someone's trying to adopt EOS and bring it into their business?
With self-implementers in general, they started strong and that sort of petered out, right? Because they got busy in their business. Some only do the easy stuff. They don't really get into the down and dirty things they really need to start talking about that's really holding the company back. The wrong people in the wrong seats, having those tough conversations, being willing to go there. We call it entering the danger. And as an objective person in the room that has I'm here to help you help yourself. Being able to call something out that's been going on for a while, I think that's powerful. But again, the team has to be willing to have that conversation. and being willing to go there. When somebody made this comment before, I thought it was very interesting. They said, it's hard for a leader to read the label when they're inside the bottle. And that is true when you're in the meeting, running the meeting, you can't participate. It's one or the other. Player manager, a player on the field does well in their position. A player manager, not necessarily, because they're either one or the other, and there's a disconnect there. So if we can come into the room and give them insight, give them being able to ask questions, and let them participate in the team building and the team decisions, we see a lot faster progress. Now, once they graduate and then they start running EOS in their business, that's great. Now, what if the team changes? What if they sell and the new leadership team isn't as savvy in this? That's where we come in and get them recharged and get them back on track with that. Again, our whole deal is to get them to learn the tools and get out of their way. So I've had conversations with businesses that have been doing it for 10 years and said, yeah, it's getting a little stale. And yeah, these people left, these people came on, they never really read the book. And that's how you can see things start falling to the wayside. So we're always willing to re-engage and get them to really see the power of EOS. Or sometimes what I like to say is self-implementers might be stuck in second gear. There's so much more power there. They just haven't either have the experience or the time to get into that and really supercharge what they're doing.
Yeah, I remember like we self-implemented for a couple of years, and then we could finally afford to go out and get an expert implementer, and we went and got Margaret Dixon out of Boulder, Colorado. And I still remember our first meeting because she was like, "What the heck are you guys doing?" And it goes back to like that stuck in second gear. Like it was already a great transformation for the business, and we only half-assed the rollout. Like we were only halfway to where we should have been. Amazing results, but she took us to the next level. And I agree with you. Like the getting stuck or the not knowing what you don't know. That's where an implementer is incredible. And it's also interesting. Like, and I've heard a lot, and I know the whole motto is like 2 years and the companies graduate. Like I never wanted to graduate because I always looked at that outside perspective, like the knowledge and just having someone like you being able to look at how the team's operating and be kind of like the unofficial advisor to like, okay, we kept this meeting on track, and then you're pulling the visionary and integrator aside and being like, hey, you got a problem over here and you've been ignoring this for the last 2.5 years. There's just so much value in that.
Yeah. And imagine, I work with a lot of family-owned businesses. The whole dynamic of having family members in the room too, that's a whole separate conversation. Or when the integrator leaves or retires and the new one comes in, it's not necessarily a good fit. All the dynamics that happen, and people elevate from one seat to another and get a new person in there, a new person in the room. I just had a team yesterday. They hired a new person. It's a small family-owned business. They go from 3 people in the leadership team to 4. So not a huge adjustment, but now you have a new person in the room, some more complexity, and asking questions a couple different ways so that he gets up to speed and so forth. But the good news is his objectivity of coming in the room for the first time, he can say, why'd you guys do it that way? And again, you get used to your own world and thinking this is the best, fastest way, and maybe it might not be. And so that's where I think our value comes in. And we're not there to tell you how you run your business. We're there to teach you the system, like you said, so you can run your business more effectively and hopefully simplify it for you and get you ready for the next evolution. And when you guys sell, or the team changes, or even Gino's story was that way, went to his family business, ran it, ended up selling it, and had to bring in a whole new leadership team and getting them up to speed on that. So, in business, things constantly are changing. Can we at least minimize the complexity so that you can worry about the exceptions of the business?
Yeah. And one of the things that you said earlier, back to the challenge, especially of people self-implementing, is like starting to have those tough conversations. Like one of the things that we had done, I think, well, is like we were addressing the right topics, but we weren't having the right conversations on those topics or issues. So we were good at like, these are the issues. We were decent at prioritizing. Then we were very bad at saying, like, this is the root, because I think we were afraid to hurt people's feelings. Like, when you come in as an implementer, like, what are some tactics, strategies? Like, how do you get this room to open up so that they can have the right conversations?
And that's a good question, because people naturally avoid those conversations because they're uncomfortable. And unfortunately, a lot of leaders aren't taught how to be great managers. And great managers ask great questions, just like a coach does, and lets the other person talk. Because the insight you're going to gain from that employee is what's working, what's not working, what they're doing well, what they're not doing well. And then you can see where they're coming from. And part of it is people in the room, do they all agree on the plan? Because what they're talking about is something so far away from the plan. Like, why are we even talking about that? Why is that important? And being objective, you can read the room. I call it, you walk in the room and you can see the matrix. You can see after working with a team, like, oh, okay, this is what's going to happen. And the obvious is very obvious, that one person that the company is past them when it comes to them contributing, or they're in a seat they shouldn't be in because they're a necessity and it never got addressed. You've heard that before, where somebody gets elevated into a seat out of need and there's no end date on this, and they've been doing this job-ish for a while, and it's been 3 years. And it's like, part of your issue goes back to that seat and lack of strong leadership in that seat with that team, but no one's willing to address it. My biggest thing lately has been teams that have realized their ideal clients. I just talked to a salesperson about this. Realize the ideal client, but the sales leader is not strong enough to get the sales team to change the way they do business. So the sales team is going after the low-hanging fruit, the easy old clients that are quick sales and get their commission, and not going after the longer-term sale with their ideal client, which who actually make them more money and make the company work less for that client, because that's their ideal client now. And those kind of things that people just think that's part of running business. And when I write it down over and over again and ask the question, I'm like, when is this going to change? You've been talking about it for months. Or when are you going to fill that seat and get out of that seat? Because you've been complaining about this for 6 months. And getting them to think, oh, let's think about it differently. You being in that seat that you shouldn't be in, or in 2 seats, you're hurting the company. You are holding us back at this point. And having the rapport and the trust in the room that I can say that, and realizing that other people around the table are like, thank God he said it, because I've been thinking about this for months. Right. And my job is really to help build that strong team where they can have those conversations. And even in our first year together, we do our annual part of the first day is doing team building and assessing team health. I want them, inevitably somebody's going to cry. It happens every time, but we want them to get there, because running a business is emotional, and it's okay if we go there. And I know it feels uncomfortable, but it's going to be okay. My biggest aha moment is doing this work is realizing, as a coach and facilitator and so forth, I don't have to have the answer. I just have to ask great questions, because the answer's always in the room. People know what's going on. They know what the answer is. They don't always want to say it out loud. But if I can ask great questions and have them come up with their own answer, that's when, like, they see a breakthrough. They're like, I wish we'd have done that 6 months ago. And I'm like, that's fine. You're doing it now.
Yep. Okay, so someone's been listening to this podcast and all of this amazing information and knowledge, and they're like, I need Chris to be my implementer. How would they find you?
So of course I'm on LinkedIn. I have my own website and so forth. And really it starts with a conversation. Even they can give me a call. I'm at 916-717-3332. It's an easy number to remember. Give me a call and let's talk about your business. I'm always up for a phone call with the business leader. Always, that's how I start my process. Let's talk about your business in a half an hour. And I say, how's your business? How's it going? And they will tell me all the things. And tell me what you want from your business. They will tell me that too. If there's an opportunity to work together, then I will want them to bring their team. We'll get in a room and I will give them the movie version of the book Traction. Really consolidate what EOS is, the tools and disciplines, and how it works working with an implementer. They have to say, we're all in or we're not all in. I need them all in for us to work together. If they say yes after that free meeting, so the phone call's free, the meeting's free. If they say, yes, I want to work with you, then we start the journey. And there's a specific process we show them. This is what it looks like to work with us. Here are the steps that I need you to, you'll be here. This is what you need to do. This is what I will do. All of our sessions are guaranteed. So anytime they get out of a session, if they don't feel like they've gotten value from us or our work together, I don't get paid. So that's what's different. We don't get paid up front. I'm there to deliver and they better show up and do the work. And so inevitably somebody will have an aha moment in those sessions and we will see how we're progressing, and we always measure ourselves. So we are trying to set standards and trying to meet those standards every time. So again, it starts with a free phone call and then a free session with them. We call it the 90-minute meeting. And then if it's a good fit, then we'll work together. And if after that 90-minute meeting, if they want somebody else, I'll gladly give them a referral.
Nice. All right, last question. If you could have a beer with any EOS implementer, who would it be?
Oh, so when I got in Dallas as an implementer, there was 12 of us. Now there's 50. We have almost 1,000 worldwide. And I've met a lot of people. I've met Gino. I've met Don. Don Tinney was the first integrator for Gino back in the day. And I've had the privilege of meeting them and having conversation with them, and they're awesome. There's so many of them. I would say if I can have an hour with Gino, just because he's a great guy and just to hear his stories, because whatever he's done in the past, I might not have even touched that yet because he's done so many sessions with so many clients. I think that would be just amazing. That being said, I see him once a year in Detroit, give him a hug and say hi, but that, we have 2 seconds together and that's it.
Nice. All right. Chris, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. And look forward to keeping these conversations going and staying in touch for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate the time, and just having the conversation with you has been great.
Awesome. Thanks.